Well, we're back. We're going to be talking about the roofing today. So previously we talked about the vapor barrier that was underneath this architectural shingles. So here for this house, we're doing architectural shingles, lots of different types of roofing, but something I did want to just bring up and make sure about the vapor barrier underneath. The plans, what they call for is for the vapor barrier to go up the wall. So being very careful, the contractor didn't want to do that. They say they don't normally do that. Well, the plans call for it, and it helps create a seamless seam that keeps water and vapor and air and that sort of thing from going in. So underneath the architectural shingles, have that run up the wall. Okay, that's the right way of doing it. So architectural shingles, a few things that just to keep in mind. Sometimes people get cheap. They did a great job here, by the way, so they didn't go skimp. What some people do is what this area right here is called the exposure. That's what's exposed that you see, and there's a portion of the shingle that's underneath it. So there's this point where it maxes out, which is, if you can see it, is right there. You want this bottom edge no further up than this point right here. The reason for it is for several things. When they staple or nail these shingles down, they usually get three staples or 3 nails, depending on how they're fastening. And when you lap it correctly, the course that's above it actually has 3 staples as well that go into the course below it. So each tab of shingles gets a total, by the end, 6 fasteners. So if you're doing it correctly like that, it fulfills your warranty, the requirement of the manufacturer, and that sort of thing. Some people like to make this exposure too big, and therefore you only get 3 fasteners in each course or each tab. So make sure that you're doing it correctly so you don't void any warranties, that sort of thing. The transition from here to a vertical face like this, that's a step flashing. It's hard to tell from the picture, but what's happening here is they're pieces of metal. They're about 8 or 12 inches long, and one, you start off with a piece of metal on top of the lower piece, and then the next course covers up that metal so you can actually see it underneath it like that. And it's called step flashing, and it creates a watertight seal. So even if water got in below here, there's flashing over top of this course, and it can't get in and underneath. So step flashing, no kind of sealer or anything like that is really needed. It gets up at the top, of course, like this. What it calls for on the plans is the Tyvek, this here house wrap, goes over top of it, not behind it, over top of it, just like it is here, and taped to it. So your vents, of course, you're gonna have vents. There's a few different methods. You could have a ridge vent, which I prefer, up at the top, so you're not looking at types of vents like this. But the house, at some point for our budget, we have to limit things that we can't do. So this is a spot where we're gonna have this style of vent in certain locations. The majority of them are on the back side of the house, so they're aesthetically pleasing. But this is a spot where it's kind of a trapped air, so to speak. So they have a vent. Without the vents, you'll avoid the warranty of the roof. The roofing will get super hot and then deteriorate your roofing, so you got to have that vents. It also allows that moisture to get out and escape, so that so you don't have any mold or condensation and that sort of thing inside your attic, because that would be super bad. So, but how they are fastened, so your shingles go underneath the first or second course, Then the plastic flange that's like this underneath is nailed down to your sheathing underneath, and then your shingles go around it. Okay, the best is also to put a bead of asphalt tar caulking around it, not just any caulking, but one compatible with this material. So valleys, I got lots of valleys and that sort of thing, a few different methods. So if you remember from earlier on when they were doing the vapor, they'd put vapor barrier, they'd put a roll of 3 foot wide heavy course rolled roofing down first, and then what happens is they'll do one course, and this course goes up underneath this one, and then this one, to make a nice clean look to it, they'll cut this later. So this course lapped up eventually, and then they came back and then they cut it they snap a line so they have a nice straight cut. So looks great. Transitions from, so I have a few of these type of transitions like here. So you always start at the bottom, coming up and underneath. You can see that everything tucks up underneath and has room. That fascia you don't want this touching, so you want a gap here so shingles can go underneath it. And then even up underneath there has flashing. Got to have that type flashing for that transition. So real good job on that. Some more venting here for this this intersecting roof, and to allow that to escape. Match that vent over there is a vent for an exhaust fan. These two are vents for the roof. Up on the other side we got some venting down low. Up high, I don't really need those down low because I have so much venting on the trusses down underneath the eaves, but that was on the plan, so that's what's done. These other two are exhaust fans as well, and then we have a vent for plumbing. That was done later, so when the plumbers came out, so the roofing was already done, and then when the plumbers came out, they drilled through, and then the roofers had to come back and install this piece here. So, but as you can see, the lower course is underneath, the upper course is half or more go down and around it. That way any water, snow buildup, that sort of thing's not migrating its way underneath and that sort of thing. Got a nice compression fit. This cap's gonna eventually come off, but everything's still kind of under test. So ridge cap. So when you're doing your ridge cap, they have a different type of shingle to match the roofing. So you're not going to be using this architectural shingle. You'll use a different type of ridge cap shingle. And then as you cut it, this will be your full width. The other end tapers. Not a bunch, but just tapers so that it's not exposed. And they did a great job, and it looks like it's nice and straight as well. So starting towards the house, working your way towards the end, and then once you get to your last course, that's when you're going to have 2 exposed nails. Ideally, these exposed nails, they get tarred over top of it, and they're also over the overhangs. So if for some reason it did get some water in, for some reason or another, it's on the overhang, not on the main portion of the house. So lots of little details. You know, the main thing is making sure your courses, so one course is one exposure going from end to end, making sure your courses are straight, they're equal. So this, how they did this roof when they came up, they actually came up on both sides And when they met up here, you got to try to make them meet so that you have one continuous course. Well, I can tell they were a little off on this side than they were on that side. So I got 1, 2, 3 courses here that started getting a little closer, so they, when you made up for it on this end, so they end up in the same spot to make a nice straight line. So that's totally fine. Closer is better, farther apart is not. So down here on this lower overhang, got some metal flashing, matches the roof. My siding is going to come down. They still need to have about 1 inch or more for my hardy siding, and which I have that, so that's good. Ideally, yeah, hindsight 2020, it actually called for this leg being up here and the shorter leg down here. Is that better? Maybe it has to do with aesthetics. It is not so far out. Farther out like this is actually better for protection. No water can migrate underneath it. The plans did call for a continuous row of this sealant underneath it. My guess is they probably, I don't cross my fingers they did it, but I doubt that's one area they did. But I'm not going to rip it up to check it. So down around the corner, there's a spot. You know, everybody needs to quality control their own stuff. So this flashing got sealed here. These are staples, but they didn't check around the corner here on this little one right here. This kind of ugly looking cap. These need to get tarred on as well. We'll see how that is. I do like that the metal goes over top of it. They make another type of metal for that, so you don't have this bend here. So something to think about. Now we're gonna go on the upper roof. So I am the homeowner, so I can be out here not tied off, but employees for OSHA, for safety, over 10 feet here, you need to be tied off. You should have a lifeline going up and over, tied off the whole way. I'm comfortable being up here. There's no cords, nothing on the roof that I can slip on. Those are the worst. Cords up and over, air hoses, they're the worst. You step on that, that's like a ball bearing going sliding right off. So be extra careful. More of a requirement during construction is having handrail going up, so if anything does fall or anybody rolls or slips, they're not falling off the roof. You get up here, it can be really dangerous, so be real careful. So your perimeters of your roof, you can see here I got a drip edge right here. It's a different profile than it is on the sides. Okay, that goes underneath your vapor barrier, not on top, but underneath. That way any water gets underneath your shingles, goes to your vapor barrier, and can feed right on out. You also need to have it on the perimeter. That's an area, both of those areas where some people skip or go cheap or whatever. Contractors, they don't skip on that, or at least they shouldn't. Drip edge, you need that to drip it off and get it away from your roof. It also holds down the vapor barrier, so it's there's a few purposes for it, but it is needed. Don't skip that step. Make sure you have that. Also, along the entire perimeter is what's called a starter course, and it's not just on the bottom, but it's also on the sides. And I can see it right here from this end to that end. So now I can tell, and I know there's a starter course going all the way up around the perimeter as well as the bottom. So any lap is all protected by that starter course as well. That first course down on the bottom, where two shingles come together, they're protected by that starter course. So any water that goes between that first course has that starter course underneath it and water can shed out. So talking with your roofing supply company, not just your standard Home Depot or Lowe's or that type of thing, an actual roofing supply company, they'll help you out with all those types of details. So we're gonna head up, double check that vent up there, and as well come out here on the end to make sure that that's all looking good. And so I'm in the homeowner, I'm kind of picky, I want to make sure everything's done right, like everyone should. And that's what we're doing. We're kind of more or less inspecting it. All right, we got another vent. So this will be at the top vent, this is where it's being tested. We got some other vents and some exhaust vents. So this is a plumbing vent. They're gonna be on every house, every building, but you can see that it's looks like it's been done well as well, or correctly I should say, tucked underneath. So this shingle here goes up about this far. Okay, so underneath it, done really well. I would like to see some sealant underneath this just for better protection. You can kind of see that that shingle goes way under. It needs a little bit more. So this roof is what's called a 6 and 12. So every horizontal foot, it rises 6 inches, 6 and 12. So it's got some steep to it. So you need to have some protection. When you're doing roofing like this, you can have boards down, keeping you from slipping, falling, that sort of thing. So as well as being tied off. Got another vent that looks like it's done better than the other one, but it still, in my opinion, should have sealant underneath it. And as you can see, that does not have it. So I'd put a bead underneath it going up and around, and enough to where it's not exposed, but it should have that. This shouldn't be done either. See all these nails? Somebody steps on that, wind carries it, falls down on the ground, and hurt somebody. That kind of stuff shouldn't get left up here. So kind of taking care, that's going to come off with me. So that sort of thing, I'll take care of that. Over here on this this gable ends, it's kind of more of a decorative type of thing other than function, but still has flashing, goes underneath. The fascia is cut back so that your roofing go underneath it. This roofing should go under and over, at least back in this area. So any water that can get back in there, because it's not just water going straight down. That wind, it can actually push water underneath up a certain distance. So think of a wind-driven rain. Coastal, certain other parts of the country, the world, there's a lot of that wind really pushing that water, so pushing it around. So think of that as well when how you're lapping these kind of transitions. The end course for this, so they put a couple pieces underneath, came back that way, and then you have an end course with exposed nails, sealed nicely. That's done very well. All of these type vents, they all look great because they were done with when the roof was being installed. Those, however, they were done after the roof was installed, so it's harder to make that transition. So you end up using more of that tar sealant, and that would be an area where it'd be nice for that to be done during the roofing installation, so it can be done just a little bit better. Wow, standing back and looking at it, there's some nice details to it. This roof took the roofers 2 days to complete. They did have to come back. They ran out of ridge cap shingles. That's part of why I was waiting on this video. But 2 days with their crew of like 3 to 4 people, and knowledgeable people, so that kind of speeds up the process. All right, what we got here is where the one section of the roof ends and is up against the vertical surface. Having your vapor barrier peel and stick behind your step flashing, that's important. Okay, so if any chance of any water coming up and over this, it has this protection behind it, laps underneath behind the step flashing, and also there's a kick out. So that kick out, that's by code in most places, at least it is here. I'd love to see this taller, you know, and that diverts the water into the gutter and gets it out away from the house. So that's important, but just as important, if not more, is the waterproofing behind it, slid up behind it. So if and when that does fail or water going over top of it, then it's protected. The gutter, something to also think about, there has to be, by the manufacturer of the siding requirement, the gutter has to be off this vertical surface. I believe it's a 1/2 inch. So that also means there's a cavity here where this water can actually go down and drip down the siding. If and when this fills up with grit, grime, you know, new shingles, some of that sands falls off of it and whatnot. So having that protected like that's in my mind critically important. Here I got two slopes come together right at a corner, so they have a kick out on this side and a kick out on that side, diverting the water out and away from this corner here. And this corner, be either under it or on top of it, should have a good bead of that tar sealant, okay? Because there's going to be a section here where it is just a hole where things are cut. So how they did it was, you have an under piece that goes underneath and then an upper piece that goes up and wraps around. So you can kind of see the bottom edge of this piece of metal right here with sealant, which is what that is, underneath it to fill in that corner. So that's about it. One more thing, I can always probably think of another thing, but your shingles starting, they should be lapping over at least 1 inch to 1.5 inches into your gutter. So I'm gonna have a gutter out here and it laps over. I do have my drip edge going, and the shingles go past that drip edge, making everything go into the gutter. So that's important, so nothing gets in and behind your gutter and trying to roll down your fascia and rotting out your fascia and all that sort of thing. So you want to say something to the camera, George?
Hello.